This isn't just an internal thing. This is something that is contributing to the bigger global crisis and helps define the strategy.
It's the e-commerce master plan podcast. Here to help you solve your marketing problems and grow your e-commerce business. Cutting through the hype to bring you inspiration and advice from the e-commerce sector and beyond. Here's your host, Chloe Thomas.
Hello and welcome. It's brilliant to have you here. Now, I do like to start an episode with a little shout out to some of the listeners who are kind enough to take the time to post a review of the show. And I've got a shout out to do today. Huge thank you to R.S. Sanchez from the USA for your 5-star rating even on Apple Podcasts. RS, you have kindly said that you really enjoy the show and that no matter what level of e-commerce expertise or where you are in your career, there is plenty to learn from every episode. Well, my hope is that this is going to be another of those episodes where you guys can learn a lot wherever you are in your business size, wherever you are in your business journey, because in this episode, we're going deep into how a big, successful brand is getting on the path to sustainability, how a massive brand in the furniture and lifestyle sector have taken their first steps, and how they've done it is a way that any size of business can do it. And we've got a sustainability expert on to take us through how they've taken that path, to share some quick wins, to share the process to go through, to share some of the things you should make sure you do to have the biggest impact the fastest, both on your business and on the planet too. We'll be talking about the whole remit of sustainability, not just the eco part. And it's just a really inspiring, interesting chat. Now, there is one little caveat, which is there's a bit of rustling going on in the audio. It's not that distracting. It's definitely not so distracting you don't want to grab the content, but there is a little bit of rustling, so please bear with us with the rustling. I took the decision that we should continue despite the rustling because what our guest is sharing is just such brilliant insight. So forgive me for that audio decision. And please do listen to the end of the episode so you don't miss out on my guest's top tips, which are frequently described as the best bit of the show, and this is no exception to that, and my own take on this episode. We're now live with Chloe's e-commerce club, my new free online club where the whole e-commerce master plan audience can come together. The point of the club is to help you all improve your e-commerce businesses, to help you solve your marketing challenges, to get supplier recommendations, learn new tactics, and much more. We're starting simple and focusing on that core of helping us all get through this challenging year, but we've got lots lined up for the coming months, and I'm sure we'll add more things based on your needs and feedback. It really is a club all about you and supporting your business. And yes, I will personally be hanging out in the club Monday to Friday to help you. So how can you join me in the club? Well, just go to ecmp.info/club. It's totally free to join. So come and join me and hundreds of our listeners at ecmp.info/club. And now to introduce today's special guest. Mirry Christie is a brand and marketing director turned sustainability consultant who's been helping furniture and lifestyle brand OKA to not only become a more sustainable business, but also to inspire their customers to create sustainable homes. OKA was founded in 1999 and now sells via their Magento site, magazines and showrooms across both the UK and USA. Hello, Mirry.
Oh, hello, Chloe. Really nice to see you today and to be joining. Thank you for inviting me.
Brilliant to have you here. I think that we hear often from a lot of startups who are on the sustainability journey, but for a business that's been around for more than 20 years to embark on it is a whole other kettle of fish. So it's brilliant to have you here to get into that. But first off, how did you get into the world of e-commerce?
Well, I joined OKA, and it's literally when it started, so over 20 years ago, and it was a very small startup business with 3 friends, and they decided to build a business with a catalogue and a catalogue business, so magazines and catalogues selling directly to customers. And I really joined them as a marketing PR role, and then as the business grew, I really expanded to cover so many different areas. I spent 15 years or so running the marketing team, and then more latterly the brand, but ended up on a very exciting journey, but got to kind of really feel and learn all the aspects of a business when it's growing. Super exciting.
It must have been a super exciting period to see a brand go from nothing to super successful over the years.
Yeah, I think also, when you start with a startup and you really don't have, a huge amount of money to spend on any of your activity, you're always thinking out the box, how you can come up with creative ideas to find, new ways to promote your brand and driving sales. And every sale is just a bonus, and it's just exciting every morning coming in and seeing what's been achieved in the previous day, where you go next. It's exhilarating.
And then after many years at OKA, you decided to go freelance and become a consultant and specialise in sustainability. So how did that come about?
Well, interestingly, as the business grew and it ended up maturing and being bought by private equity investors about 4 years ago. And with that came questions of ESG, sustainability, whichever one anyone wants to term it. But it was the first real conversations that started, because obviously our new investors were wanting to know, what the business was doing, and nothing was kind of formalised. So I essentially ended up holding the hat of sustainability because I was super interested in it. I did a course at NYU in America, the Centre of Sustainability, which was fascinating, with brands such as Nike, Tesla, all the others, and learned a huge amount about an area which I didn't know a lot about. But as such, it gave me the knowledge and the help in order to come back to OKA and start creating a strategy.
So the real catalyst for OKA deciding to do this was the private equity investors. Were there other, as this started to be put on the table, were there other reasons why OKA decided to embrace this?
Well, strangely enough, I think as the business grew, and I always look back at the early days and think, it started as a very sustainable business in some respects, in terms of covering the social side. So the factories, although the factories weren't, in the UK, and we were working with factories all around the world, we were working very closely with all the suppliers, which means that you had really strong relationships to know how your products were being made, what they were using in terms of materials and responsible materials, through to, what the labour and human rights were in those factories. So, it was always building those relationships, which I still see as part of the sustainability side. Lots of people talk about sustainability as very much the kind of environmental impact, but actually I see sustainability as covering all areas of the business, from the economic, the social, the governance, but also the social side, and the way product is made is as important, as a very important part of the discussion.
I mean, it hugely is, but we seem to have ended up in this space now. We've got to 2023 where sustainability has become short code for doing something for the planet, but the real definition of it is much more complicated than that. And actually all those other things you just mentioned that are part of sustainability, they're kind of like a step away from doing good for the planet, because if you make people's lives better, they'll do better for the planet, and on we go. To do sustainability completely is a little bit more complicated than just being carbon conscious, isn't it?
I would agree with you, and I think obviously we start talking about the kind of the planet, but also, and particularly for the investors, it was about for them it's about reducing risk. So reducing risk for investors, protection of the brand reputation. We've seen all the headlines when companies get outed for kind of unsustainable practices, and I think when investors come into a brand, they want to protect every area of the brand. It improves the brand image, I would say, and it gives you potentially a competitive advantage. I think it's a great way to increase productivity, reducing costs. I think most people associate sustainability with a cost as something they need to be, but actually it can be a saving in the business and make the business more efficient. I'm always really interested by looking, particularly when we looked at things like packaging, which is one of the most important things. I pushed I was very keen to get a packing technologist, and when we got a packing technologist on board, which is obviously a cost to the business, very quickly you could see that the savings that could be made by going back to when the product was originally manufactured and packaged, that there were savings for less packaging, which meant the product had less packaging. When it got shipped in a container, there would be more product fitting into the containers, so less freight costs, less greenhouse gas emissions as a result, all the way through to when it arrives in the UK in the warehouse, less warehouse space, and ultimately the effect of the customer gets at the end of the day, which is less rubbish to remove and have to dispose of. So I think that's a really interesting way to kind of see kind of cost savings through the whole life cycle, which is interesting. I think the sustainability also another thing, which is it increases a business's ability to comply with regulations. It's a great way to attract employees and any potential future investors. Like I've kind of mentioned, I think a lot of the younger potential employees wanting to work for sustainable brands, and in doing that you can reduce your recruitment costs potentially. And value and sustainability practices encourage loyalty for employees, which is a good one to touch on as well.
Yeah, I think it impacts in so many ways for a business, and that seems to come out of almost every episode we record now, is that the benefit of doing the right thing is not just that you're doing the right thing, it's also that recruitment's become easier, customer recruitment's become easier, customer retention's become easier, money's being saved. There's so many good, pure business reasons for doing this. And then you've got all the great things that happen for the planet as well.
Yeah, and you can attract new customers.
And now you've mentioned a bit about, bringing on new experts to help review the packaging, it impacting on recruiting people. Have you found, over the beginning this journey with OKA, that the bigger changes have been around people or around things, if I can put it that bluntly?
So I think a big part and the big challenge for me at the beginning was to get everybody on board. So getting, first of all, getting the CFO or the finance director, getting everybody on board to show and to show them, explain why we're doing it, why we want to do it. It started with a whole piece about stakeholder engagement. So whether it's the senior management, the senior leadership team, who is responsible, making sure that it's discussed on the board, on an agenda at a board level, that it's regularly discussed, is a very good start. But I think you've got the senior management, you've then got the employees, so gathering momentum from employees who are going to be implementing your strategy is really critical. So, groups within the business, internal sustainability groups that talking about it, I think is very important. But also the other side is suppliers. So talking to suppliers about your ambitions, what you're doing, encouraging them, supporting them. So it's very much about, having those conversations with them, which I think is fascinating, because you learn a whole lot more about suppliers when you start going down talking about discussions that maybe you might never have had with them. How do they tackle this issue? It's collaboration. It's a lot about collaborations. And actually we ended up asking customers too, what were their views? We looked at different customers, business, trade customers, other types of customers. We talked to everybody to get all the views of what was important for the business, which was a piece of work called a materiality assessment. Once we'd worked out what was important, then we could, and had everybody's buy-in. It was about embedding the strategy into the business, so that it's not just a bolt-on that's a thing that's there in the background and ticking boxes. It really is what everybody's doing on a day-to-day basis and seeing it as important for the business.
So a materiality assessment, is that the first thing you recommend anyone does, is to find out what's important to the team in the business, what's important to the customers and so forth, before doing anything else?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. So many people say to me, where do we start? And by doing a materiality assessment, what you're doing is looking at all the material elements that are topics that are important to a business like yours, and they can be up to 15 or so, and they can cover anything from your human and labour rights to your data privacy and cybersecurity, responsible marketing, how you manage your waste, all the way through to employee engagements, developments, community engagement development. So you can't do everything. Most businesses have got limited resources. You can't expect to do anything. So work out, by speaking to your stakeholders, what the very high priority items are. So out of those, you'll end up with all being important, but you can narrow down the top 3 or 4 to focus on. And once you've got those, it's about looking at, creating a vision for your business. So, where is it you want to go? And then building out some pillars and a strategy which has goals attached to all those different material topics. So bit by bit, you start with all the topics, prioritize which ones are important. You create pillars. I wanted to make it really easy for anybody to understand. So we came up with, the people part, then we had the kind of the planet side, which was obviously equally important, but and the product side. So we split it out into 3 very simple pillars so people would understand where we were, and then each of the leadership team would have accountability for goals within there. And the goals that we set, we aligned to the bigger global strategy, which I think is a really good thing to do. So the United Nations Global Compact and the Sustainable Development Goals, which is a kind of the biggest thing there is to a kind of global strategy. There are 17 different goals, but you don't have to do them all. You can pick out the ones that are relevant to your business and what you can contribute to. And I think by putting it into that framework, it helps everybody to realise that this isn't just an internal thing. This is something that is contributing to the bigger global crisis, and helps define the strategy. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And I think a lot of brands are scared to tell their customer base what they're doing on the route to sustainability. They're scared to be actively transparent, to use a brilliant phrase I've stolen from Giles Smith of the Sustainable E-commerce podcast. Got to reference Giles every time I use it. But so many brands are scared to be actively transparent and share their journey. I think a lot would be scared to ask their customers at that very first take. So have you got any words of advice for those who are too scared to ask the customers in order to realise what's important, in order to build the right plan for their business?
I think for the customers, we did it through a survey and a few interviews. I think it's about, we know that a lot of customers, they just need to understand very clear questions of what you're wanting. That most of them will tell you that the packaging is the most critical thing. More and more, it's about sustainable sourcing of materials. So where are things made? You don't have to ask all your customers. Take a sample of some of your loyal customers. Reach out to them. We did by email, had a conversation with them. Were they happy to? An incentive, a voucher or something for them if they want to partake. And actually what you find is that they really they love being asked. They do love being asked that for their opinion. And it brought back some really interesting commentary from them. And, we were understanding what's important. And I think it also allowed them an opportunity to ask questions to us as well. So it opened up a dialogue, which I think is never a bad thing with your customers.
Oh, never a bad thing. So that was an excellent answer. Thank you, Mirry. And I mean, you've done this with OKA. You're doing it with other brands as well. What's the, if someone wants to start and they want to make a big change fast, what's the biggest impact for the least amount of effort you've seen brands make in sustainability, if I can put it that bluntly?
I think every business will have different priorities. So I think the biggest impact that we probably have had is probably on the packaging side, because it was something that everybody was very aware of. And there are other things that we've done alongside it, which is we've joined the United Nations Global Compact, which is an amazing organisation which is supporting people on their journey and has lots of information. But it's allowed, I think it's allowed us to talk internally to employees about other organisations that we're involved in. And I think given us an opportunity to be able to talk about setting, for example, most people don't know what their impact is because they don't know, they're not measuring their greenhouse gas emissions. So, is that a good place to start? It puts disciplines in the business which you have to learn the data collection side, but actually benchmarking where you are, you then know where you need to get to. So by benchmarking what the emissions were, particularly for a small business, so SMEs for the science-based targets set goals just for scope 1 and scope 2, which is somewhat easier than the scope 3, which is much more complicated. And I think in doing that, you can set your target for where you want to be for 2030, aligned to the bigger global strategy. So I think by learning what your impact is, by doing either quarterly or annual scope 1 and scope 2 emissions is a good place to start. The biggest impact, we've had community engagement development, working with charities, so working with the Trussell Trust. Most recently, we started to work with Women's Aid, which is a great charity, given that our business was founded by 3 women, and everybody in the business has been able to get involved in raising money and doing lots of different activities, so it generated quite a lot of interest in the business, which I think has been really positive too. In terms of one single, the packaging probably is the one that gets everybody excited, because they can actually see things really changing.
I love all those things you've done, but I think there is an impact of people seeing it and seeing progress to get people motivated at the beginning of the journey, to get things happening and getting everyone bought in, to have something so visible. Apart from the fact, it has all those benefits you mentioned as well, it has to be a good idea. And have you got a last piece of advice for anyone who's considering going on the journey? Any last tips to help them get there clearer, faster, better, etc.?
I think I would say don't be scared to start it. Don't be intimidated by it. There's a lot of people out there who would like to help. There are a lot of organisations. It doesn't need to be done immediately. It is about starting the journey, building it up slowly. Really what the really important things that are going to make the difference. In doing this, you find little nuggets which are amazing. I will remember forever a conversation I had about 20 years ago. I went to see a factory in India with the 3 founders of OKA, and it was one of the most amazing things at that time, seeing the workmanship they did. Probably didn't, as my role developed into marketing, etc., I probably didn't have much more kind of contact with them. But I rang them up in the last year and said to them, this is what we're doing on sustainability. Can you tell us what you're doing, or would you like to hear what we're doing? And they literally opened up and told me all these incredible stuff that they're doing. So they make rugs for us. They go out to the temples every day and sweep up all the leaves so that they can use the dyes to make the rugs without any toxic dye. They make furniture where they're keeping every element of any waste in the production, and they're using it to create fars so that in rainy seasons they can dry the fabrics. They were already looking after doing educating projects in their village for children, and various things. And it just struck me from my marketing background that all of this, I wanted to send somebody out there to photograph and film and let them talk about this, because I think that kind of information for the customer to be able to see is just so exciting, to be able to have that transparency and to hear what is happening the other side of the world, which is really, we're all on the journey together. So open up to people who you may have worked with for years and years but never had the conversations. Ask them what they're doing. Support each other. This will only happen if everybody's working together and supporting each other.
E-commerce Master Plan is supported by some of the greatest companies in the e-commerce sector. Here's a reminder of who they are.
This episode is brought to you by Tidio, the top-rated customer service platform on Shopify. Tidio enables you to manage all your communication channels in one dashboard, making it super easy for your support team to handle all customer inquiries. Tidio AI helps you automate more than 40% of support responses and increases your sales by recommending products and offering discounts to your website visitors. Increase customer satisfaction and sales with personalised shopping experiences. Visit ecmp.info/Tidio, that's TIDIO, and start using Tidio now. Plus, get an exclusive discount for e-commerce Masterplan podcast listeners by using the promo code MASTERPLAN. Do you, like me, have a bit of a software tools habit? Well, I love a good tool and the impact it can have on my business. For me, a good tool is one that solves a problem we have, that can save me and my team time, that improves performance, and where the price is 100% worth it. That's why I've always got an eye on the latest tools to appear on AppSumo. Not heard of it? AppSumo is a site where you can buy key software tools for your business once and own them forever. For example, we use a tool I bought from AppSumo in 2020 for $49 to schedule all our Twitter, LinkedIn and Facebook posts. In fact, whilst creating and promoting this very episode, me and the team will have used at least 10 tools I've bought from AppSumo. I'm a big fan. So go on, check out what's on offer right now by going to ecmp.info/appsumo. That's ecmp.info/appsumo. And I bet you'll find a brilliant solution for at least one of your problems. Go to ecmp.info/appsumo.
It's time for the top tips round.
Okay, I love this section because it gives me and our listeners some really quick ideas for taking our businesses to the next level. So, Mirry, are you ready for the top tips?
Yes.
Okay, the book top tip. If everyone listening to this podcast agreed to take Friday off and read a book to make their business better, which book would you recommend?
So interestingly, I am reading a book at the moment, which is actually written by a friend of mine's father, but it's called How to Be the Chief Executive of Your Own Life by a guy called Mike Wilson. It's very different, but his energy and it's almost like a self-help work-life balance autobiography and how to build a successful business all in one. Got humour, wisdom, humility, and I struggle with the work-life balance. I'm a mum with children, a wife, trying to run it all. So I love inspiring stories of how people learn to do that and do it well.
I love that. This sounds like the book that ticks every box. Excellent. Okay. The traffic top tip. Which marketing method do you either prize above all others or think doesn't get the press it deserves?
This is an interesting one because, with my background of marketing, I'm always wanting to, look at the customer, always, looking at different opportunities for thinking outside the box to get new customers. And I used to love doing that in the early days of OKA. And what could you get that was, on brand but unexpected and might be, less expensive? However, I think with my sustainability hat on, it's about collaboration. So particularly with the sustainability, I think opens up, loads of opportunities for collaboration. And in doing that, you're opening up new audiences for your brand. And I think if it's done well, I think it's brilliant. Not so good if it's not done so well, I have to say.
So true. But yeah, I love the fact you brought up that collaborative element again, because I have to say, like you, I found people in the sustainability space are so eager to help.
Yeah. And
so eager to help us all along this journey. It's a lovely group of humans to get involved with. Okay, the tool top tip. Maybe a collaboration tool, a social media plugin, a phone app, or just a way of working. Is there a cool little tool you use that makes you and your team more efficient from day to day?
On this one, I mean, I guess, the biggest revolution, it's going to sound slightly boring because I don't use any kind of particular fancy apps or anything, but having worked for many years just, in kind of old school, the biggest revolution for me was Teams, SharePoint, being able to kind of share and communicate in it, particularly it was really brought on by COVID, of how effectively you can do that and share and edit documents and everything. I mean, everybody will be using it now, but it's been a life changer for me because I work from home a lot, because I'm juggling, added to the fact that I have 3 children and somehow their school seems to be on Teams too. So when I'm not flipping between what I've got on Teams, I'm flipping into their accounts to see what homework they've got to do.
So Microsoft Teams all the way.
Yeah.
Okay, the growth top tip then. If you met someone today who's focused on growing their e-commerce business from 100 orders per month to 1,000, what would be your number one tip for them?
I mean, obviously, again, I'd go down the kind of data capture, segmenting your file, but I know that lots of people talk about that. So from my brand hat, good imagery. So good imagery for your product, good styling, invest in it. If your product needs explanation, good videos, really, really important, especially if you're creating a brand. I think it's always been something that at the heart of OKA in the early days, all the way through, I helped create all the magazines all the way through. And it was always about, making it look on brand and imagery was critical. And I think just talking about what I was talking about earlier, where being able to look at imagery that maybe what the factory's doing out in the Far East and being able to tell those stories, I think is even adds another level onto, particularly when you're working with brands, of how things are made, how they're designed, and who's in those process. I think is hugely valuable.
Yeah, I would totally second that. Hard to track, but so impactful. Mirry, before we say goodbye, could you let listeners know, first off, where they can find OKA if they want to go and check out what they're up to?
Yep, OKA can be found at oka.com. All the details, all the new stores opening throughout the US and also in the UK, and the website and everything else you need to know.
Excellent. And Mirry, you, as we mentioned earlier, you are now a sustainability consultant, helping brands start their journey. So if anyone wants to have a chat with you or get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to find out a bit more about what you're up to?
Yeah, great. Thank you. It's I'm on LinkedIn as Mirry Christie, or my email is Mirry, Mirry Christie, CHRISTIE @hotmail.co.uk. Look forward to hearing from anybody.
Simple as that, everybody. Mirry, thank you so much for coming on. You have hopefully inspired many of our audience to take the first step or take the next step on their sustainability journey. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking to us.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
So thank you for bearing with the slight little bit of rustling in that interview. I think you'll agree, definitely worth it for the amazing tips and advice there from Mirry. She is clearly an expert on helping brands get started with their journey to sustainability. And for me, a couple of key things to take out of that. First of all, do your materiality assessment. That's talk to the stakeholders, talk to the customers, talk to your suppliers, work out where you're at and which sustainability changes are going to make the most difference in your business. And yes, that does mean which your customers are going to appreciate you doing the most, which your team are going to appreciate you doing the most, both because that's going to help your business, which is going to help you become more sustainable in the future, and also because you're going to start creating that positive momentum with all the people involved in what you do. And then second, which is quite closely linked, I think, but it's the collaborative nature of it all. You know, work with people. The sustainability space is incredibly collaborative, incredibly helpful, because fundamentally we're all aiming at the same endpoint. We're all aiming on improving the planet and all the rest of those sustainability aims. So ask the questions, open the conversations up with people, and do collaborate, because you will get there an awful lot faster, an awful lot easier, and an awful lot more successfully too. Now, you can get your hands on our notes from today's show, including the top tips and links to those key things that Mirry was mentioning, by heading over to ecommercemasterplan.com, or just put ECMP, short for ecommercemasterplan.info, / whatever the number of this episode is, into the URL bar, and you will go straight to the correct episode page. So that's ecmp.info / episode number. Once you get to the website, please do add yourself to our email list, because then you won't miss out on any of the many other things I share to help you improve your business. Lots coming up in the near future via the email list. Now, if you liked this episode, then make sure you check out episode 421, where I'm talking to another huge brand about how they've been embracing sustainability. In that episode, it's global fashion brand Boden. And if you too are on Magento, you can find all our Magento interviews via ecmp.info / Magento. Thank you so much for tuning in to this and every episode of the E-commerce Masterplan podcast. I bring you a new interview every week because I want to inspire and help e-commerce business owners to succeed and thrive with their businesses, including progressing along the path to net zero. So if you know someone this show can help, please tell them to listen to the E-commerce Masterplan podcast. I hope you have a great week, and don't forget to keep optimizing.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Masterplan podcast. Find out more at ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast.
Don't miss out. It's time you joined Chloe's e-commerce club, our free club that's all about helping you grow your e-commerce store. Join right now for free at ecmp.info / club.